Okay, where we left off last time was we talked about marginal cost. So what we know so far is that, marginal cost is a type of variable cost, because variable costs are those that increase in total with output as output rises. We said it was useful for determining the firm's profit maximising output, and we also said that if we add up marginal cost, if we take the marginal cost of the first unit plus the marginal cost of the second unit plus the marginal cost of the third unit, then that gives us the total variable cost of 3 units. If that was 7, that was 6, that was 8. Add that up, that's 21. 21 would be the total variable cost of 3 units. So there's one last thing that we need to do with the short run, which is what we've done is we'd said, well, let's suppose that that's output, that's cost, and that's the Nike swoosh, that's marginal costs, increasing returns to the variable factor, diminishing returns to the variable factor. We said suppose the firm was selling it. That was the selling price. Of £10. What we'd said is, well, look, the firm wants to make every unit. This is effectively marginal revenue. The firm wants to produce every unit where the extra revenue is more than the extra cost all the way through. That's the most profitable individual unit, but we still want to make all these all the way up to that. But what we don't know is, what we know is that price is greater than variable cost all the way along, which is great. So that's adding to the firm's financial well-being. It should be increasing profits, but we don't know whether the firm's making a profit overall. That's the weakness, because what we don't know is anything about fixed costs. Because if we add up all our variable marginal costs, as we said a minute ago, all we'll get is total variable cost. So all we need to know is that selling price of £10, is that high enough to make a profit? So what do we need to know that? We need to know, on average, how much does a unit cost to make? In other words, we need to know the unit cost. And the unit cost is simply the average cost or the average total cost, which are the same thing. So what we're going to say then is, what we need to do then is say, well, let's get average variable cost then. Let's get average cost. We did average fixed cost last time. So what we know is that our average cost, average total cost, it must be made up of the variable cost per unit plus the fixed cost per unit. And we know the fixed cost per unit is simple because we did that last time. And we said, rats, come back. What we said is that, in total, fixed costs stay the same as output increases. But we know that if that's say £10,000, for a flight to Almaty or something, if we have one passenger, the cost of £10,000. 2, it's £5,000 per passenger. 2 times 5 is 10. If you had 4 passengers, it'd be 2,500. If you had 10 passengers, it'd be 1,000. So we said that the average fixed cost line looks like that. Getting nearer and nearer and nearer to the output axis without ever quite touching. The question is, what does average variable cost look like? So, and what we know is that we know that average variable cost per unit, average variable cost, it must be your total variable cost divided by the number of units that you make. So, and we know that total variable cost is the sum of marginal costs. We add up all the marginal costs. So all we've got to do is add up our marginal costs and divide by output. That sounds very complicated, but if I show you, you'll see that actually it's quite straightforward. So, suppose that's output, that's cost. That's marginal cost again. Suppose we make 1 unit and it costs 10 quid. Well, on average, our average variable cost, it must also be 10 quid because we've made 1 unit, total variable cost is 10, because there's only 1 unit. Suppose we make a second unit and the extra cost of that one is 6 quid. So now our total variable cost is 10 plus 6, which is 16, divided by 2 is 8. Suppose we make a third unit, that one costs 5. Yeah, we now got 10 plus 6 plus 5, that's 21, divided by 3 is 7. What this is going to do is, essentially, it's the rule of averages and marginals that we talked about before, which is that as long as the marginal is below the average, then our average variable cost curve is going to keep falling. Even on this bit here, where the marginal cost has started to rise, it's still below the current average, and therefore the average continues to fall until that point. After that unit there, now the marginal is above the average. The marginal is above the current average. Therefore, our average variable cost line is going to start rising like that, and therefore marginal cost passes through the minimum point of the average variable cost. Because up until that point, average variable cost is falling. After that, average variable cost is rising. So we've now got average variable and we've got average fixed costs. So all we've got to do is to combine those to get average total cost. So that's a relatively straightforward task. We know there's output, there's cost. We know that average variable cost looks a bit like that. Average fixed cost looks something like that. So all we've got to do is add the two of them together. So at that output there, output X, average fixed cost is say 10 quid, average variable cost is 15. Therefore, my average total cost, which is made up of my fixed and variable costs, that must be there, about 25 quid. At Y, my average fixed costs are about 3 quid. My average variable costs are about 9 quid. So, therefore, my average total cost is about 12 quid. So, whereas that, we're adding on fixed costs of £10, there, we're adding on fixed costs of £3. Here, your fixed cost per unit is more like about £1. Therefore, average total cost, or average cost if you prefer, those two lines, average total and average variable, are getting closer and closer together. And the reason is that we're adding a smaller addition, a smaller fixed cost per unit onto average variable cost. So because average fixed cost tends towards 0, obviously, if we're flying our plane to Almaty with at a cost of £10,000 and we have 10,000 passengers on it, with a very full plane, then the fixed cost, the cost per passenger is only £1. So basically, the cost would be would simply be whatever the variable costs are. That would determine the unit cost. So if we now kind of combine all that together, what we've now got is a situation where we've got all the cost curves that we're going to need. So what we know is that average total cost looks like that. Average variable cost, it's quite hard doing it like this. Looks like that, and we know that marginal cost will pass through the minimum point of both of those, and then kind of average fixed cost goes like that, goes down like that. So that's your picture. So, but most often, come that way. So average total, average variable, average fixed, marginal cost goes through the minimum point of the two, average variable and average total cost goes. So most often you won't be using that, to be honest. Most often it's just what we really want to know about is marginal cost and average cost. And what we do right at the end of the lesson is we sort of look. Suppose that's output. Suppose that's average cost, average total cost, and that's marginal cost. We said, well, okay, how many units will our firm want to produce? And nothing's changed since 10 minutes ago at the start of this video. Everybody suddenly gets obsessed by that point for some reason. It's a mystery to me to some extent why they do. Because we agreed, in the lesson at the start of this video, that the profit maximizing output is simply there. You want to make all the units where the extra revenue money in, is greater than the extra cost. You want to make all the units where the extra revenue is greater than the extra cost, which is there, 100 units. So how much revenue has the firm made? It's made £10 times 100. So its revenue is 100 times 10 quid, which is £1,000. So the big question then is, has it made a profit? And we can't use marginal cost for that because marginal cost, as we've agreed, is only a type of variable cost. Therefore, what we need to say is, well, what is my overall cost? And what we've got to do is say, well, look, I'm making 100 units, so what is the cost per unit? It's not that. That's just the extra cost of the last unit. It's the average cost. That's the thing that we care about. And all we do, therefore, is say, well, for 100 units, the average cost curve shows me the cost per unit of any particular output. Again, I'm not interested in that because that shows me the average cost of making 80 units. I'm interested in 100 units. That's my average cost. So what we're saying then is that the cost per unit is about £7. So it's not there, it's there. It's the average cost at which 100 units are made. So therefore, my costs are 100 units times £7, which is £700. Dear. And therefore my profit is £300, which you can just about see on the bottom right-hand corner of the board. Or on the diagram, we can say the costs are 100 units times £7. Your costs are that area there, and therefore what remains is profit. And that's what we did last time. Again, if that doesn't make any sense, just come and ask me if you like. But what happens now is we start using these things. We're not going to add loads and loads of new curves for a bit. There aren't that many more, to be honest. So that's the underlying theory of costs. As I say, any problems, drop me an email or come and see me.